Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a village that doesn't even know it's about to be erased. You're asleep. Your dreams are simple, warm bread, a dry roof, the rhythm of sheep bells in the distance. But outside, there's smoke on the horizon, a low drum beat in the earth, and a kind of silence that feels like the sky is holding its breath. You blink awake. Your mouth is dry. And that's when you smell it. Wood smoke, thick and bitter, not from your hearth. No breakfast smells, no neighbor's fire. Just the unmistakable stench of burning that doesn't belong. Your body moves before your mind catches up, like a deer's legs, twitching before it knows why. You scramble out of bed, feet slapping the cold dirt floor. Outside, someone is screaming, not shouting, screaming. You duck out of your cottage and immediately regret it. The entire eastern edge of the village is orange, not sunrise fire. Big rolling waves of flame swallowing thatched roofs. You hear a sharp clang, metal on metal, a scream that ends abruptly. Then a new sound, something between a cheer and a war cry, guttural and harsh. You've never heard it before, but somehow you know it's not from your village. And that's the exact moment it hits you. You're being raided. By Vikings. Yes, those Vikings. The ones with axes and shields and boats that look like monsters. The ones from the stories the priest told you, usually followed by prayers for protection and suspiciously large donations. You look down and realize you're wearing a nightshirt and nothing else. You don't have your boots. You don't even have your belt knife. And right now, your survival chances are lower than your winter grain storage. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always love hearing from night owls across the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You turn and run. Instinct takes over. You dodge past your neighbor's goat, which is currently losing its mind in a high-pitched, bleeding panic. Smoke curls around your legs. The air tastes like ash and adrenaline. You barely miss stepping on a burning roof beam. To your left, you see the miller's house collapse. A woman stumbles out her arms, cradling a sack of flour like it's her child. Two shapes follow her tall, armored faces, painted. One of them grabs her braid and drags her back. You do not stop. You know you're a coward. Right now, cowardice is survival. Historians still argue whether raids like these were truly surprise attacks or if the villages ignored warning signs, strangers in the woods ships on the horizon, that bad feeling the dogs seem to have. You didn't feel anything last night, but maybe the cows did. You reach the edge of the village, the old trail through the birch grove. You remember this path from childhood? It winds past the orchard, then down to the creek. You don't stop running until your lungs burn and the trees blur together. You drop behind a stump and curl in, finally letting yourself breathe. You survive the first wave, barely. But the fear isn't gone. It's changing shape. Now it's cold, metallic, a voice in your head whispering they'll find you, because they always do. And if they do, well, you're not exactly someone who fights back. You helped dig the new well. You sang at that wedding last summer. You're nice. Vikings don't care about nice. They care about what you're worth, how much silver you're carrying, whether you'd fetch a good price in Dublin, whether you'd make it through the sea journey without dying of something messy and inconvenient. You hear footsteps, soft ones, not armored. Could be a child, or worse, someone pretending to be. You don't move. Your breath is so loud, you swear it's echoing. Something walks past. A fox. You almost laugh. You don't, because you might actually cry instead. That's when the wind shifts, and you hear the horn again, long and low, like something ancient waking up. They're not done, not even close. You don't have a plan. Let's be clear about that. You're crouched behind a stump, barefoot in a nightshirt without a weapon, and the most tactical thing you've done today is not soil yourself. You're not thinking like a hero. You're thinking like someone who'd very much like to avoid becoming a cautionary tale told by traumatized survivors, assuming there are any left. But the screaming has stopped, and that's somehow worse. It's the quiet after the slaughter, the kind of quiet that wraps itself around you like wet wool, heavy and impossible to breathe through. You peek out from your hiding spot. Smoke curls between the trees, drifting lazily now. There's a faint orange glow on the horizon, flickering like the dying pulse of something that once lived. You take a step, then another. The ground is cold and squishy underfoot. Dew and blood have a surprisingly similar texture, and you try not to think too hard about which one you're standing in. Your toes are numb. Your breath clouds in front of you, but it's the kind of cold you barely notice anymore. Fear has its own internal furnace. The trail back to the village is not safe, but it's familiar. You move like you're walking on a frozen lake, afraid the ice might crack if you breathe too loud. You're not sure why you're going back. Curiosity, hope. Some naive part of you thinking maybe they've left and you can help someone. No, it's simpler than that. You're looking for boots. You spot a pair by the well. They belong to old Tom the cooper. He always left them outside his hut to keep the mud off the floors. You shuffle over, eyes darting to every shadow. The boots are still warm when you slide them on, and that's when you hear the whimper. You freeze. It's coming from the goat pen, which is at this point more of a smoldering suggestion of a fence. You inch closer and peek inside. It's not a goat. It's Lise. She's 10, or maybe 11. You don't really know. She's curled under a broken cart, hugging a wicker basket like it's a shield. Her face is streaked with soot, her eyes wide and glassy. She doesn't see you. You crouch. Lise, you whisper. She blinks. It's me, you say, and offer your hand like she's a wild animal, which honestly feels appropriate for both of you right now. She doesn't move. Then a voice shatters the silence. Not yours, not Lisa's. It comes from the road. Deep, confident, not shouting, just talking in a language you don't understand. Norse, and it's getting closer. You grab Lisa's arm and haul her out. She stumbles, drops the basket, and something clatters inside, metal on metal. You don't look. You just run. Again, you're getting good at this. Back into the trees, behind the same stump. Lisa's breathing is ragged. She wheezes like a bellows with a tear in it. You put your hand over her mouth, not hard, just enough. Her eyes meet yours, and in that moment, you both know if they find you now, it's over. Historians still argue about Viking tactics. Some say they were organized, strategic. Others insist they were opportunistic, chaotic. What you know for certain is that whoever led this raid isn't just pillaging, they're hunting, moving methodically, calling out, listening. You lie flat on the ground. You can hear footsteps now, crunching, slow, calculated, a pause, then movement again. Someone's checking the huts. You wonder how long you can stay still. Your legs are cramping. Your lungs ache. Lisa's shivering so hard, you're afraid the brush around her will rustle. And then, miracle of miracles, the footsteps retreat. You wait. 5 minutes, then 10, then longer. Only when you're sure the sounds are gone do you let yourself sit up. Lise is asleep or unconscious. You check her pulse. Alive. Just out. You look toward the village again. You shouldn't, but you do. And what you see is worse than you imagined. Half the homes are just ash and timbers. The others are looted doors swinging open. The chapel roof has caved in. The well is scorched, and next to it you see 3 bodies lined up like logs, neatly, intentionally. A message. You don't count them. You can't. Instead, you turn your attention to something else, the dock. It's far just visible through a break in the trees. But there are boats, long, slender, with dragon heads carved into the prows. Their sails are striped red and white like they're mocking you. The warriors are loading barrels onto them, and people. You blink. Not corpses. People. Villagers. Alive. Bound. Lisa stirs beside you. They're taking them, you whisper. She doesn't answer. You're not sure what you expected. Relief, terror. You're not even sure what you feel. Just this vague spinning nausea. You press your forehead against the tree bark and close your eyes. You could leave right now. Head for the next village. Pretend you were never here. But if they're taking people, then maybe, just maybe, your sister is still alive. Or your cousin. Or Tom, though that seems unlikely, given the boots. You open your eyes, and now you do have a plan. A very stupid, barely formed, probably won't work plan. You're going to follow them, just long enough to know who was taken, where they're going. You gather Lise. She's dazed, but walking. You find her a cloak somehow miraculously unburned and wrap it around her. You grab a broken staff to use as a walking stick. Not a weapon, just something to hold. Something to feel like you're not entirely useless. You move at a distance, always in shadow. And you watch as the ships push off from shore. You count them. 3. And you make a promise to Lisa, to yourself, to no one in particular. You're not going to die today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe in some distant place where the sun never sets and the language tastes like thunder. But not today. Not barefoot, not silent, not behind a stump, like a forgotten sheep. Today you follow, even if your chances of surviving the next part, still not likely. You follow the shoreline like a shadow clinging to the edge of the world. The Viking ships slip across the water, their dragon-prowed hulls cutting through the waves as if they own the ocean, which, in a way, they kind of do. You and Lisa trail behind on foot, keeping to the forest path that winds beside the coast. It's not the fastest route, but it's the safest, or at least the one least likely to end in a bearded man throwing a spear at your torso. Lisa hasn't said much. Occasionally, she stumbles and mumbles something you can't hear. You offer her water from a stream. She sips without blinking. You get the sense her brain's taken a short vacation from reality. Honestly, you envy her. You walk in silence, your ears tuned to every rustle of wind, every bird that dares to sing. When a branch snaps behind you, your soul briefly vacates your body. Just a squirrel. Probably. Hopefully. You don't investigate. By midday, the ships have docked on a small, rocky beach ahead. You and Lise stop on a bluff overlooking the scene, ducking behind a tangle of bushes. From here, you can see the whole operation. The Vikings move like ants, shouting orders, herding villagers, checking supplies. You count again. 12 villagers, 3 warriors standing guard, 2 more dragging a barrel of fish toward one of the boats, and 1 very tall man with a fur-lined cloak and an axe that gleams like it's never touched dirt. He shouts something in Norse and everyone obeys. You assume he's the boss, the CEO of Pillaging Inc. You watch as he approaches a young man from your village, Tobin, the baker's son. Tobin stands tall, even bound at the wrists. You admire that. It lasts exactly 4 seconds. The Viking chief says something, and Tobin spits on his boots. The next moment is fast. A hand signal, a spear, a dull thud. Tobin crumples like wet laundry. You grip Lisa's hand so tightly, your knuckles go white. Historians still argue about the rules of Viking raiding. Some say they had honor codes. Others say it depended entirely on the mood of the leader. Today's mood: definitely don't mess with me before I've had lunch. Lisa whispers, we should go. She's right. You know she's right. But your feet don't move. Not yet, because now you notice something new. A separate group, 3 villagers standing apart, not bound, not crying, talking. One of them is Jareth, the village blacksmith, and he's laughing, not maniacally, casually, like he's sharing a joke with the fur-cloaked Viking. You blink. Wait, Jareth. You think back. He vanished for a few days last month. Said he was trading horses. Came back with better tools, oddly shaped coins, and a smug grin. Did he invite them? You feel a new emotion bubbling under your skin. Not fear, not grief, rage, betrayal. You want to march down that bluff and scream at him, throw rocks, make a dramatic speech about loyalty and friendship and how you once fixed his stupid cartwheel for free. But instead, you crouch lower because rage gets you killed. Patience might not. Lise tugs your sleeve. You follow her gaze. One of the warriors is heading toward your direction. You duck, pressing into the ground. Lisa curls beside you like a fox kit, hiding from a wolf. The warrior doesn't look up. He relieves himself on a tree stump nearby, sings a little tune while doing it. You're not fluent in Norse, but the tone is somewhere between drunken sailor and goat being strangled. You wait until he's gone, then breathe again. That was close. Too close. You crawl back from the bluff and whisper to Lise, "We can't stay here." She nods. You make a plan. Sort of. It's more of a loose intention, not to die. Head south. Find the nearest trade town. Maybe someone there can help. Maybe word is spread. Maybe they care. Maybe pigs will learn to sing madrigals and open a law firm. Hope isn't your strong suit right now, but you start walking anyway. You pass a stream, and Lisa stops to drink. You let her. You need a moment to think. What do you even do now? You can't save 12 villagers on your own. You have no weapons, no allies, and no idea where the Vikings will go next. Even if you could sneak on board, then what heroically untie everyone? Paddle a long ship back using your bare hands and the power of good intentions. Historians still debate whether there were ever successful rescue attempts during raids. There's a story about a woman in Francia who dressed as a Norseman and snuck into a camp to save her brother. Probably apocryphal, probably nonsense, but inspiring if you ignore how it likely ended. Lise finishes drinking and wipes her face on her sleeve. She looks at you, eyes clearer now. What happens if they come back? You swallow. They will. And that's the truth. You know it. She knows it. This wasn't the only village. And you weren't the only survivors. Which means maybe there's a pattern. Maybe there's a resistance. Maybe you don't have to fight. Maybe you just have to warn people so that no one else wakes up to the sound of fire and horn blasts. You stand up straighter. New plan. Find the next village. Tell them what's coming. Surviving the raid wasn't likely, but you did. Maybe that counts for something. You don't look back. That's the first rule of surviving something that should have killed you. Keep moving. You and Lise push into the trees, leaving behind the smoke-choked air and the shore where dragons with sails are docked like they own the world. You don't know what's ahead, only that it isn't behind you. Your boots, well, Tom's boots squelch through mud and fallen leaves. Lisa trails behind like a pale shadow, the too big cloak dragging across the underbrush. She hasn't asked where you're going, and you haven't explained. Maybe you're both pretending you have a destination. You don't. You're mostly just following the sun and a vague gut feeling. The forest is strangely peaceful. Birds are singing again, oblivious. A squirrel chitters from a branch above as if to say, "You again." And for a second, it almost feels like the world didn't end 12 hours ago. Almost. You keep expecting to hear horns again, footsteps, the metallic whine of a blade being drawn. But the only sound is your own ragged breathing and the occasional sniffle from Lisa, who is either crying or has a cold, possibly both. You stop by a fallen tree to rest. The bark is damp. The moss is soft. It would be a perfect napping spot if your nerves weren't vibrating like plucked harp strings. "Why'd they come?" Lise asks. You shrug. "Because we had things they wanted." "Like what?" You think about it. Your village wasn't rich. You had goats, grain, maybe a couple of silver trinkets, and 3 people who could read. They take people, you say, to sell. She looks away. You let the silence sit there heavy and bitter. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were mostly about resources, land, or political power. Some say the Norse were just looking for farmland. Others say they were driven by overpopulation, internal rivalries, or a desire for wealth and glory. But when you're on the ground running barefoot from men with axes, the why doesn't feel especially comforting. You get up and start walking again. You pass a trail you don't recognize. Then a circle of standing stones, ancient and moss-covered, possibly cursed. You give it a wide berth. You're not superstitious, but let's be honest, today is not the day to anger old gods. By late afternoon, you reach a hill that overlooks the next valley. And there it is. A village, not yours. Bigger, fortified, with a wooden palisade around it and smoke rising from chimneys that aren't on fire. For the first time in what feels like a century, you let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. Lisa grabs your hand. Do we tell them? Yes. You both walk toward it, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. Dirty, shoeless, possibly traumatized, but not threatening. The guards at the gate shout when they see you. One raises a spear. You wave both hands and shout back, "We're not thieves." The other one squints. "You from up north." You nod. "Torthwick." They exchange a look. "Not much left of Torthwick," the first guard says quietly. You nod again. This time, you feel it deep in your bones. They open the gate. You step inside. The village smells like soup and smoke and manure. A strange comfort. Children run barefoot in the mud. Women hang laundry. Men sharpen tools. Life in progress. It feels surreal. You're taken to a longhouse. Inside, a woman with gray streaks in her braid listens patiently as you tell your story. You describe the attack, the ships, The man in the fur cloak, the villagers being taken. She doesn't interrupt, just nods, now and then. When you finish, she pours you a bowl of broth. It's thin and salty, and the best thing you've tasted in your life. Name's Mathlin, she says. We've heard rumors. Ships along the coast. Thought they might skip us. They won't, you say. She looks at you like she already knew that. Then she asks a question you weren't expecting. Can you draw the boats? You blink. What? She places a piece of charcoal and a scrap of parchment in front of you. It's rough, torn, but usable. I'll try. You sketch the ship, the dragon head, the stripes on the sail. You draw the chief's axe as best you remember. It curved like a bird's beak. She studies it. We've seen this one before, she mutters. Raid up the coast 2 winters ago. He's bold. Comes early in the season. You nod, unsure what to say. Mathlin looks at Lise. And the girl, you answer for her. She saw her brother taken. She nods. No sympathy in her face, just understanding, like someone who's done this too many times to waste time crying. We'll send word south, she says. There's a network. We trade fish for steel, steel for salt, salt for warnings. That surprises you? You didn't know villages cooperated. You thought everyone just waited to be next. There's going to be a meeting, she continues. Coastal towns, trade hubs, maybe even some old soldiers. If you want to help, come. You glance at Lise. She's staring into her broth. You say, we'll think about it, because honestly, it's the first offer of purpose you've had since your village burned. You sleep in the longhouse that night. It's warm, quiet, no horns, no screams. You dream of waves and fire, of voices speaking in tongues, of a dragon ship floating through a sea of stars. And when you wake up, something inside you has shifted. You're no longer just surviving. You're preparing. You rise before dawn. The longhouse is dim shadows stretching from the dying fire like sleepy ghosts. Lisa is curled beside you, breathing slow and deep. You take a moment, just one, to watch her sleep. She looks younger, softer, not like the girl who clawed her way through the woods in blood-streaked clothes. Not like the girl who watched her brother vanish into the hull of a ship with horns. Then you're up, boots on, cloak wrapped. A new day, a new direction. You step outside. The village is still. Frost clings to rooftops. Smoke curls from chimneys in lazy spirals. A dog barks, once, then settles again. You breathe in the cold and let it settle somewhere in your chest where the fire used to be. You find Mathlin at the small stable by the east wall, brushing down a shaggy brown pony. You're early, she says. You nod. She gestures to a bench. Sit. You do. Today we send word to Oltmere, she says. They've had fewer raids, good stone defenses, a river that slows the boats. They've been collecting survivors. You raise your eyebrows. Like an army, she snorts. No. A list. Names, maps, counts of the dead. Witnesses. That hits harder than you expect. You've been trying so hard to survive that you forgot you were a witness. You saw Tobin fall, saw the flames eat your neighbor's home, saw the dragon's head rising from the mist. You ask, what happens if we give them names? They get remembered, she says, instead of erased. Historians still debate whether oral accounts from Viking-era villagers were reliable, or whether fear twisted memory beyond truth. But when you're the one who smelled the burning, heard the screaming, and counted the empty beds, it doesn't feel like a story. It feels like a ledger of pain, and someone should write it down. You offer to go with the messenger to Oltmere. Mathelin gives you a long look, then nods once. We travel light, she says. You leave at noon. Back in the longhouse, you explain to Lise. She's already up combing her fingers through her hair. I want to come, she says. You hesitate. It'll be dangerous. She shrugs. So is staying, and that's that. At noon, you mount a horse with a shaggy mane and a temper problem. Lise rides behind you, arms around your waist. The messenger, a boy no older than 14, but with the eyes of someone who's seen too much, leads the way. The road to Oltmere is long. Fields blur into forest. Forest gives way to marsh. The trees lean close, whispering things you're not sure you want to understand. The messenger doesn't talk much, just chews dried meat and watches the shadows. Around dusk, you camp in a clearing. Lise starts a fire. You gather twigs. The boy hands out hard bread and a wedge of something that might be cheese. You eat without speaking. Then the boy says, "They burned my village too." You look up. "They came at night," he continues. "We hid under the floorboards. My father didn't fit. He fought them with a broom." "A broom." You wince. "They laughed," the boy says, and spits into the dirt. "Took him anyway." There's silence after that. Then Lise asks, "What's your name?" "Dennett." You nod. I know who you are," he interrupts. "You're the one who ran." It stings. But it's not untrue. Lise, to your surprise, glares at him. "He ran, yes, but he also saved me." Dennett shrugs. "We all ran." No one says anything else for a long time. The stars come out. A wolf howls in the distance. You lie on your back and watch the sky. Somewhere out there, ships are moving. Oars slicing water. Men sharpening blades, preparing for their next visit. But for now, here in this clearing under the quiet hush of leaves, you feel something unfamiliar. You feel necessary. By the second day, the land begins to change. Fewer trees, more roads. You pass a caravan going north. 2 oxen, 5 men, 1 child with a slingshot. They nod politely. Their cart is full of salted fish and barrels, labeled in red paint. Trade still exists. Life still stumbles forward. You ask Dennett, "How do people keep going?" He shrugs. What else are they going to do? A fair point. You crest a hill late that afternoon and see it Oltmere. It's not beautiful. Stone walls, thick and squat, smoke rising in orderly spirals, people moving like ants. But compared to where you've been, it looks like a miracle. The gates open for you. Inside, everything is loud. Horses snort. Hammers ring. Children shout. But underneath the noise is something else: structure. People know where to go, know who to talk to. You're taken to a hall with long benches. A woman in armor, actual armor, greets you. She's got salt and pepper hair and arms like tree trunks. You're the Torthwick pair. You nod. Sit. Talk. And you do. You tell her everything. The ships, the chief, the betrayal, the girl in the birch grove, the fire. She takes notes with a quill that scratches like a rat in the dark. When you finish, she nods. Once. We're organizing a council, she says. Merchants, elders, militia, survivors like you. You'll speak. You blink. Me who better you want to protest. Say you're no one, just a coward in borrowed boots. But she's already moved on, calling over a scribe. Lise squeezes your hand. Maybe this is why you lived, not to swing a sword, but to make sure someone remembers. The meeting hall smells like sweat dust and oil lamps. It's too bright, too crowded, and far too loud for your liking. You sit on a wooden bench, back straight, palms slick. Lise sits beside you, small and still, her hand wrapped around yours, like it's the only anchor in the storm. People file in, some in fur cloaks, some in patched linen, others with polished boots that gleam like river rocks. You recognize no one, but they all look at you like you're about to say something important, which frankly is terrifying. Across the hall you spot Dennett, leaning against the far wall. He gives you a nod. You're not sure if it's encouragement or a challenge. A man slams a staff against the floor. The room quiets, though not entirely. Voices still murmur. Someone coughs. A dog barks once and is quickly silenced. Then a voice calls out, "Witness," from Torthwick speak. You stand, legs unsteady, throat dry. You never signed up for this. You clear your throat. They came in the morning, before breakfast. The room waits. You begin. You tell them everything again, but slower this time. You describe the smoke, the noise, the confusion. You recount the ships, the dragon-head prow, the man with a gold-ringed beard and wolfskin cloak. You describe the fire and the screaming. You mention Tobin's name and Lisa's. You hear a sharp breath from someone behind you when you say her brother was taken. Then you say something you hadn't planned. We thought someone would help us. We thought we'd be warned. You let that hang in the air. It hurts, but it's true. Historians still debate how much communication there was between early medieval settlements. Letters, runners, word of mouth. Did villages just pretend they were alone until they weren't? You don't know. But you say, we can't act like islands anymore, because they don't see us that way. To them, we're just stops on a map. Someone claps. It's awkward, offbeat. Then another joins, and suddenly there's applause. Sparse, but real. You sit a little dazed. The woman in armor gives you a nod. You did it. After the meeting, you step outside for air. The sun is setting over the stone wall, painting the sky in streaks of bruised purple and ash pink. You take a long breath and let it go slowly, like steam from a boiling pot, finally lifting. Lise joins you. You were good, she says. You laugh once. I was scared. She shrugs. Everyone is. You lean on the wall, watching crows drift over the trees. A man approaches. He wears a scholar's robe, frayed at the hem, ink stains on the sleeves. He introduces himself as Aldrich. He's from the archive. I wrote down your speech, he says. Would you be willing to help me draw maps? You blink. Maps. He nods. Of the coastline, where they came from, where they landed, where they burned. You pause. Why me? You saw it, he says. That makes you more useful than half our council. You agree. Because why not? You can't bring Tobin back, but maybe you can put him on a map. The days stretch. You settle in Oltmere like a stray cat, allowed near the hearth, but not quite of the household. People nod to you now. They say Torthwick like it's a title. You help Aldrich with maps. You describe shorelines, boat sizes, how many raiders per house, which buildings they spared. He writes it all down in sharp, tiny letters. Historians will thank you one day, he says. You snort. Historians, he shrugs, assuming there's still history left. There's dark humor in that, but you appreciate it. You also learn. About coastal signals fires built on cliffs to warn inland towns. About coded messages sent through bell rings and horn calls. About the men who ride between villages with scrolls tucked in their boots. There's a system here, crude, but real. You didn't know it existed. Now you're a part of it. Lise trains with the town's healer. She doesn't talk about her brother, but you catch her boiling herbs, bandaging wounds, practicing knots with twine when she thinks no one's watching. She's learning how to save people. You're learning how to track them. Neither of you speaks of the day you ran anymore, but it's always there, beneath everything, like a scar that still itches in the rain. One morning, Aldrich hands you a charcoal sketch. It's rough, but you recognize it instantly. The dragon-headed ship. He's copied it from your description, added shading and ink wash. Below it in blocky letters, raider pattern, a leader, identified. You stare at the image. Then you whisper, his name was Skari. Aldrich looks up. Skari. You nod. One of the villagers shouted it before they died. He writes it down. Skari. The man in the wolf skin. The one who stood on the prow like a god of fire. A name. A start. The world feels slightly less chaotic when you can name the monster, even if it's only one of many. Historians still argue whether Viking leaders like Skari were warlords, kings, or just charismatic thugs with good boats. The line between fame and infamy was as blurry then as it is now. But one thing is clear. They were organized, coordinated, strategic. And now maybe the rest of you can be too. Oltmere starts to feel familiar, not quite home. Nothing will ever be home again, but familiar. The clanging rhythm of the blacksmith's hammer at dawn. The bread seller's bell in the afternoon. The shared nods between villagers who've all lost something and know better than to ask what. You wake earlier now, not out of fear, but out of necessity. You've taken to walking the eastern wall before sunrise, watching the mist lift off the river like a ghost shedding its skin. It's beautiful in a way that hurts because you didn't notice beauty like that before. Back when Tobin was alive, back when life was normal. You carry a map now, rolled in leather, tucked into your satchel. You've been sketching it with Aldrich's help, marking suspected landing points, circles where villages once were, X's for those that still stand. It's not perfect, but it's more than you had when you arrived. One morning, Mathelin finds you sitting by the outer gate. "Can you ride to Stonemere?" she asks. You blink. Why me? Because they won't listen to a scribe, but they'll listen to someone who's seen the fire. And so you ride again. Stonemere lies 2 days south, built on a hill, ringed with apple trees and blessed with a lazy river that curls like a cat around its edge. They haven't been raided yet, but rumors have reached them, and fear clings to their market stalls like early frost. You speak before their elders in a round hall lined with wool tapestries and worry lines. You tell the truth as best you can. No dramatic flourishes, no myths, just the sound of shields on doors and the smell of burning thatch. They listen, but they do not act. "We have guards," one says, and "no coastline," says another. You press harder. They walked from the shore to us. They knew the path. If they know your path too, they won't bother with us, the elder interrupts. We're too small. That sentence makes your stomach twist. You remember thinking the same thing. We're not worth the trouble. Turns out to raiders, every town is worth something. Food, salt, livestock, people. Still you thank them, leave respectfully, and ride away with ice in your chest. You stop by a creek that night, let the horse drink, and unpack your map. With a stick, you poke a new note beside. Stonemere won't join. No prep. Lise would call it pessimistic. Aldrich would say it's honest. You say nothing, because silence is safer. Historians still argue whether small settlements refused help out of pride, fear, or sheer ignorance, but you're starting to believe it's denial. A comforting lie, whispered by people who've never smelled their neighbor's house on fire. Back in Oltmere, Aldrich greets you with tea and ink-stained fingers. They sent nothing, he asks. You shake your head. He sighs. We need allies, not islands. Then he adds, Stonemere, to his chart, drawing a little wall around it in thick black ink, his way of showing it's closed off. Maybe they'll change their minds when the smoke comes, he mutters. You don't say what you're thinking. Maybe they won't get that chance. Winter creeps in, like a cat soft-pawed, and sudden. The fields go stiff. The river edges freeze. The villagers wrap themselves in wool and superstition. You start carving sticks for the signal fires, one every 3 miles, covered in pitch, stored in dry sheds, ready to light if the ships appear again. It's slow work, repetitive, but comforting in its simplicity. Lise helps. Her fingers are raw from herb grinding and splint tying, but she insists on stacking wood and hauling buckets. I don't want to just wait anymore, she says. Neither do you. One afternoon while cutting firewood, you spot a stranger on the road, limping. Hood pulled low. He carries a long staff and wears a cloak stitched from too many pieces. He collapses near the gate. You and 2 guards run out. He's barely conscious, lips cracked, eyes half shut. You bring him water. He drinks like someone trying to undrown himself. Later, by the fire, he tells his story. He's from Eastwin, or rather, he was. It's gone, he rasps. They came from the cliffs. 2 ships, red sails, the kind with the dragon heads. He reaches into his pack and pulls out a strip of sailcloth. It's stiff with salt, dyed a deep, angry red. This was nailed to the well. You take it from him. It's not just red. There's a symbol, a coiled serpent biting its own tail. Aldrich's face turns pale. Scary, he says. Your hands tighten. That name again. Scary. Like a bad song stuck in your skull. You update the map that night. A new X. A new loss. Another mark closer to Oltmere. You wake the next morning with a knot in your chest. Fear. No. Resolve. There's a pattern now. You can feel it. A slow encircling, like wolves testing a herd. You don't want to be a sheep anymore, so you go to Mathelin. I want to train, you say. She raises an eyebrow. With a sword, with anything. She eyes your shoulders. You've got the arms of a farmer. Then I'll swing a shovel. She grins and hands you a spear. It's heavier than you expect. So is the idea of fighting back, but you take it. Because maybe surviving isn't just about running anymore. The spear blisters your hands before it sharpens your aim. Training is brutal, not in the cinematic montage-worthy kind of way, but in the slow, soul-grinding repetition that makes your arms ache and your pride shrivel. You lunge, you miss. You lunge again. You fall. Mathelin, ever patient, simply says again. You learn quickly that battle isn't about strength. It's about knowing when not to die. She shows you how to shift your weight, how to plant your back foot, like a tree root, how to let the other person tire themselves out while you breathe. It's not elegant, but it's efficient. And in the end, that's the point. Lise watches, sometimes pretending she's passing by on an herb run, but you catch the way she lingers when you practice forms. She never comments, just offers you a strip of boiled bark for your blisters and a look that says, at least you're trying. One night after drills, you sit beside her near the signal post overlooking the valley. There are 10 posts now, 10 fires ready to blaze if the sea brings ships again. Do you think they're coming soon? She asks. You glance at the sky. It's red near the horizon. Maybe. They always come in cold months, she says, because people are hungrier, because people are slower. You nod. Historians still argue whether Viking raids followed seasonal strategies or were driven by sheer opportunism. Some say they waited for harvest. Others claim they moved with the tides. You've decided they move with weakness, any kind, any shape. And weakness is everywhere lately. Another rider arrives from the east. She wears a green scarf and a face wind-chapped raw. Her name is Mirian. She brings news. A town called Weirhold was sacked 3 days ago. 4 ships. One flew the Serpent banner. You don't need to ask whose. She also brings a surprise, a wounded man from Weirhold who escaped. You listen to his story. They took the strong ones, he says. Not just the food, not just the silver. They picked people. Picked, Aldrich asks. The man nods. Young, healthy. Men and women both. Like they were sorting. You feel a chill. Slavery. That word you've only heard in hushed stories. It's no longer myth. It's process. Scary isn't just raiding. He's building something. That night you stare at your map until the candles flicker and die. The X's feel too heavy. The ones that aren't crossed out feel like promises you haven't kept yet. You redraw Scary's route based on sightings, a loose crescent curving inland. He's not sweeping across, he's encircling, tightening. Oltmere is in the middle. You go to Mathlin. He's coming here next, you say. She doesn't argue. She simply says, then we'll be ready. Ready means drills, lots of them. It means setting traps in the woods, digging ditches, sharpening stakes, teaching children which bell means hide and which means run. Lise organizes supply caches, barrels of dried food, bundles of cloaks, first aid kits wrapped in oilskin. You don't sleep much. No one does. But the village hums now, like a clock being wound. And not one person says, we're too small anymore. The first smoke appears on the southern horizon 3 days later. Thin, pale, distant. A scout brings word. Small village, burned livestock, taken boats, seen along the inlet. You light the first signal. One fire in the chain of 10. It blazes against the dawn. A message written in flame. And you wait. Not with panic, not this time, but with your spear in hand. Your boots laced tight, your map folded in your coat because you're not a farmer anymore. And this isn't a story about being spared. This is the part where someone finally fights back. That night, Lise approaches with a bundle of cloth. For luck, she says, it's a scarf. Dark blue, dyed with elderberry and stitched with a small knot pattern in the corner. You tie it around your wrist. It smells faintly of herbs and smoke. "You'll come back?" she asks. You hesitate, because you don't know, but you say, "I'll try." She nods, and that's enough. The horn sounds the next morning, not a drill, not a false alarm. The rhythm is sharp, urgent. You run, not away, but toward the gate. The ships have landed, 3 of them. Red sails, serpent sigils, just like the cloth from Eastwind. The villagers fall into place. Mathelin takes the west flank. You take the center. Lise disappears into the healing tents, her sleeves already rolled. You grip your spear tighter, not because you're fearless, but because you're ready, because someone has to be, because you remember Tobin and the smoke and Scary's smile. And now maybe you'll be the story people tell afterward, not the one who burned, but the one who fought. You don't remember the first man you strike, only the jolt, like hitting a wet log, and the way your hands sting afterward. Everything else blurs. The air fills with screams and smoke and the staccato clang of metal on metal. You duck, you swing, you forget to breathe, and then you breathe too much. The world narrows, expands, narrows again. Mathelin's voice cuts through. "Keep the line, you force your feet to plant. You jab, not swing." Just like she taught you, spears aren't swords. They're fences with teeth. You don't chase. You don't charge. You hold. A raider barrels toward you. Wolf skin on his shoulders, axe in hand, grin like a broken window. You aim low. Your spear catches his thigh. He falls. You don't watch him land. You move on. To your left, someone is sobbing. To your right, a teenager, barely 15, stabs wildly at the air. You shove him behind you. Hold steady. You bark. He does. You don't know his name. Maybe he doesn't know yours. But that's war. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were chaotic or choreographed. Some describe them as tidal waves, violent but directionless. Others see them as surgical strikes, fast, deliberate, calculated. Today it feels like both. A wave with teeth. You lose track of time. Minutes bleed into each other, but you don't fall. Not yet. Skari appears just before midday. You don't need anyone to tell you it's him. He's taller than the rest. Wolfskin cloak, gold rings in his beard. His axe is curved like a question mark, cruel and gleaming. He doesn't shout, doesn't rage. He walks, like he owns the earth, like this town is just another coin in his purse. Your blood runs cold, but your feet stay planted. He makes eye contact, and then he smiles. Not cruel, not mocking, interested. You grip your spear. Your hands don't shake. Much. He strides through the chaos, barely acknowledging the fight around him. His men fan out like hounds. You see him motion once, just a flick of his hand, and 4 raiders peel away toward the granary. He's not here to burn. He's here to take. And suddenly you realize this isn't a raid. It's a recruitment. Lise appears beside you, hair soaked with sweat, arms bloody to the elbows. Signal tower's safe, she says. Wounded are moved. Good. Where is he? You nod toward the granary. She follows your gaze. Scary. You nod again. She doesn't ask anything else, just places a hand on your shoulder. You stop him, she says. Then she's gone, back into the fray. You push forward, not fast, not brave, just forward. Scary spots you, tilts his head, like a falcon spotting a squirrel that's slightly too bold. You raise your spear, and for a heartbeat, everything else falls away. Just you and him and the hollow thrum of something ancient in your bones. He comes at you like he's late for dinner. No theatrics, just speed. You barely parry. His axe bites the air inches from your ribs. You stumble. Recover. Jab. Miss. He swings again. You duck. Time stutters, then your foot finds a rock. You slip, and in that breath of a moment, you think this is it, but a cry pierces the chaos. A horn, not from your side, from the east, another signal fire, and it's not yours. It's a response. Reinforcements number not troops, towns, Stonemere, and beyond. They lit their fires. They're joining. Scary pauses. He hears it too. That's when your spear finds his shoulder. A clean hit. Not deep, but deep enough. He snarls, pulls back, stumbles. His men shout in Norse. A signal is given. A retreat just like that. The tide shifts. You fall to your knees. Not from injury, but from relief. It's over. For now. The fires die down. The villagers regroup. Skari's gone, but not defeated. Not yet. That night the map gets a new mark, not an X, but a circle. Oltmere. The village that held, the village that drew the line. And for once wasn't crossed. Oltmere smells like ash and sweat and something else, something strangely close to hope. Not joy. That's too big a word. But hope, yes, that fits. A cracked seedling poking through scorched earth. You wake the morning after the attack on a straw pallet in the signal tower. Boots still on Lise, asleep beside you, head resting on a rolled-up cloak. Her hands are blistered. There's dried blood along her jaw. But she's breathing evenly, peacefully. You don't wake her. Instead, you walk through a village that somehow still stands. Roofs are scorched. A few fences down. One shed is still smoldering. But the granary is intact. The well is unpoisoned. Most importantly, most people are alive. You see Mathlin at the west wall, inspecting damage. She looks tired. One eye is swollen shut. She lifts a hand when she sees you. You did well, she says simply. You nod. He's still out there. He knows our name now. That sentence sits heavy between you. Historians still argue whether resistance ever truly deterred Viking raids or just shifted their targets. Some villages were razed again and again. Others earned a kind of wary respect, too much trouble to bother. You're hoping to be the latter, but planning for the former. Aldrich appears with his ink-stained fingers and an entire sheaf of new parchment. 3 towns signaled back yesterday, he says. One sent a rider. He hands you a folded note. It smells of rosemary and ink. You read aloud, "We saw your fire, we stand with you. If they return light it again, so will we." You close your eyes for a moment. It's working. You're not alone anymore. You spend the next week digging graves. There's no ceremony, just earth, sweat, and silence. Even the children help carrying stones for the markers. Tobin's grave is the first one you tend. You finally carve his name. It's crude, but it's real. Lise joins you at sunset. She doesn't say anything, just lights a small candle beside the stone. You sit there together until the wax pools and hardens. She leans her head on your shoulder. In the evenings, people gather near the longhouse again. Someone brings out a harp, another a pot of weak ale. The songs are quieter now, older, less about glory, more about getting through the night. You listen cup in hand, scarf still tied to your wrist. Someone starts calling you Spearhand. You pretend to hate it. You don't. One afternoon you return to the training yard. Mathelin is already there, drilling with a group of teens, your accidental army. You join the line without a word. Thrust, recover, turn, repeat. A new rhythm. One that feels less like surviving and more like becoming what you're not sure yet, but not a victim. Not anymore. Lisa surprises you by joining the drills the next day. She's clumsy, trips over her own feet. But when Mathelin laughs, Lise jabs her wooden spear with surprising accuracy. Don't underestimate healers. She grins. You decide not to. You find the red sail again in Aldrich's archives, the one from Eastwind. You unfold it slowly. Trace the serpent with your fingers. It's worn, frayed at the edges. But you swear it's changed. The tail now has a black slash across it. A new mark. A scar. A message. Historians still debate the meaning of such sigils. Some claim the serpent represented eternity. Others say it was a warning, a dare. You're not sure, but you fold the cloth back up carefully. Then you tuck it in your coat. Because if he comes again, you want to remember the last time you saw his flag retreating into the trees. A month passes. Winter presses down like a hand on your chest. Heavy, unrelenting. But the village functions. Rations are shared. Rotations are fair. The signal fires are checked twice daily. And sometimes you laugh. Not loud, not long, but you do. That counts for something. One morning, Mathelin asks you to walk the wall with her. "I'm leaving," she says bluntly. You stop mid-step. What? There are towns farther east, ones that never got our fire, ones still fighting alone. I need to go to them, help them build what we've built. You swallow. You're better at this than you think, she says. I'm not a leader. She shrugs. Neither was I. Then someone lit a fire. She grips your forearm. Keep it burning, then she's gone. Just like that. You stand on the same watchtower that night looking east. The valley is quiet. But your heart isn't. Because now people are looking to you. You're the one who stood, who stayed, who fought. You're the one who didn't die, and that's no small thing. You light the signal torch again, not out of fear this time, but as a reminder, a flare in the dark, a promise that you're still here, and you're not done yet. You begin to notice it in the way people look at you. Not with awe, thank the gods, no one's calling you a hero, but with a certain unspoken deference. They make room when you pass. They ask you where to place the new grain sacks. They wait for your nod before they light the cooking fires on foggy mornings. And when a child drops a pot and everyone jumps, it's your voice that calms them. Just a pot, you say gently. No axes today. They laugh nervously. Then they believe you, because if you say it, maybe it's true. You don't ask to lead, but leadership, it seems, asks for you. You find yourself assigning patrols, reviewing maps, answering questions that used to be Mathlin's to answer. The wall needs reinforcing. You point out the weak spots. The weather shifts colder than expected. You suggest rationing the salt pork now before it turns. At night you lie awake under your thin blanket and wonder when exactly you became the one people depended on. You didn't want this, and yet you can't imagine walking away now. Not when it's working. Historians still argue about how community leaders were chosen in small Anglo-Saxon settlements. Some say it was lineage passed down from blood. Others point to merit. Whoever defended the village best fed the people through winter, or built the sturdiest walls. But most scholars agree titles mattered less than trust. And somehow you've earned theirs, even if you're still not sure how. One day the rider comes. He's young, barely out of boyhood, and half frozen, but he holds himself upright as if the parchment he carries is worth more than gold. It is. The message is stamped with 3 symbols, a wheat sheaf, a boar's tusk, and a broken crown. 3 villages to the north, Woldmere, Kefin, and Hollow Hill, have united, formed a defense pact, inspired, they say, by Oltmere's signal fires. They want to meet, coordinate, strategize. You stare at the paper. You never thought this would spread. And now it's growing faster than you can track, like fire licking up dry wood. The first council is held in Oltmere's longhouse. You sweep the floors yourself. Lise arranges dried lavender near the benches to fight the stink of old meat and smoke. Aldrich unrolls his best maps and stands them up like a child showing off drawings. The leaders arrive on horseback, coats trimmed with fox fur expressions, guarded but curious. One is missing 2 fingers. Another wears a bandage around his eye. All of them bear the same haunted look you carried a month ago. You know what it means. They've seen Skari, or someone like him. The meeting begins with silence, then questions. How many men can you muster? How many spears? What do you know of the long ships, the banners, their movements? You speak when spoken to, not to impress, but to inform. Facts, not bravado. The mood shifts. They listen. One of them, Lady Anwin from Woldmere, leans forward, studying you. You're young, she says, not unkindly. You've seen more than most. You nod. I've lost more than most. That earns a long pause. Then she says, that's why you're still here. By nightfall, an agreement is inked. Shared scouts, shared grain, shared fire posts across the hills. If one is attacked, the others ride. A pact. You never thought you'd be making those. Certainly not with nobles. Certainly not in your soot-stained tunic and muddy boots. But here you are. When they leave, Lise sits beside you at the fire. Looks like you're a politician now, she teases. You grimace. Please don't say that. You think we'll win? She asks, more serious now. You poke the fire. Watch the embers leap like tiny soldiers. I think we won't be alone anymore. She exhales slowly. That's a start. You keep training. Keep patrolling. Keep listening. Because there's no finish line. Only preparation. Then, one morning, a hawk circles the village 3 times. Not unusual, but something about it feels off. Old Aldrich mutters omen under his breath. You don't laugh. Because hours later, a rider arrives, the mark of Eastwind on his cloak. But not from Eastwind. Not anymore. Gone, he says. Simple as that. No survivors. Just smoke. And footprints heading west. Toward you. The council convenes again. This time, no one waits for your opinion. They ask for your plan. And you give it. Clear. Measured. Unsparing. Reinforce the west wall. Evacuate the children. Stock the wells. Move the infirm to Hollow Hill. We make our stand here, you say. No one argues, because they know what you've seen, because they remember the fire, because they trust you. You go to the signal tower again that night. You light the torch. The same one you lit when you were still a farmer, still afraid, still unsure. The flame flickers, then roars, and somewhere in the hills, one by one, the fires answer. It starts with the smell, not smoke, not blood, but the sea. You wake to it, briny, sharp, impossible this far inland, but unmistakable. It carries on the wind like a warning. Salt and rot, and something ancient, something that once dragged itself onto shore, dripping and cruel. Then comes the sound, low at first, a distant drumbeat, not war drums, oars, rhythmic, inevitable. You rush to the watchtower. Fog lies heavy across the valley, but the birds are gone. No crows, no hawks, no gulls. Even the wind feels hushed, like the land itself is holding its breath. You don't need to see them to know they've come back. Skari doesn't wait for nightfall this time. By midday, the first sail cuts through the mist like a knife through cloth. Black, the same serpent as before. But now it has 2 heads. You clench your jaw. They're not just raiding anymore. They're answering. You gather the defenders. Some are older now, some newer. A few from Oltmere and Kefin arrived 2 days before. You count 83 total. Not enough. Never enough. But you speak clearly, calmly. This is not east wind, you tell them. We are not sheep. We are not firewood. We are the line. Lise squeezes your hand as you step down. Nice speech, she whispers, very growly. You don't smile. Not today. Historians still debate how much coordination Viking leaders had across fleets. Some say war bands operated in loose competitive networks. Others argue they followed a larger command proto-kingdoms, forming in the shadows of conquest. Either way, Skari isn't improvising anymore. He's testing you. And this time, he brought friends. The first wave comes with silence. You expect battle cries. Instead they walk through the fog, expressionless, axes in hand, shields raised, like reapers harvesting quiet. You order your archers to hold, hold, hold. Then, now. The arrows whistle, thud into fleshwood, the cold ground. Some fall, most don't. Still it begins. You've trained for this. Positioned spearmen along the bottlenecks where terrain favors the defense. Dug shallow pits disguised with leaves, crude but effective. Laid oil traps near the southern approach. But nothing prepares you for the sound of steel hitting bone. The crunch, the gurgle, the way the world tilts. You steady yourself and fight. It's not like last time. You don't flail. You calculate. Block. Thrust. Turn. You hear someone shout your name. Not spearhand. Your actual name. And for a moment you're just a person again. Not a symbol. Not a leader. Just scared and angry and alive. A teenage boy drops beside you, clutching his ankle. You haul him behind a wagon. I can still shoot, he gasps. You hand him a bow, then do it. His arrow flies, strikes a raider clean in the throat. You nod. He beams, then reloads. The oil trap works. Lise lights it with a torch, eyes blazing like a goddess of fire. Flames erupt down the narrow path, consuming 4 men instantly. Their screams are high and strange, swallowed by the mist. A few villagers turn away. Lisa doesn't, neither do you, because mercy won't save anyone here. At the east wall, a horn sounds, not yours. You climb the battlement, and there, rising from the trees, more banners. Oltmere, Hollow Hill, even a few from distant Brightmere who you didn't know had heard. Reinforcements. You exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding. Hope tastes like pine smoke and iron. The tide shifts, slowly, but it shifts. You press forward. Raider lines break. Skari's men aren't used to losing. They falter. They retreat. That's when Skari appears again, as if summoned by your defiance. Same axe, new armor, blackened bronze, etched with runes. He doesn't grin this time. He just walks forward slow and terrible. You meet him in the mud. No speeches, just blades. He's stronger. You're faster. He feints high, you duck. You swing low. He blocks. Your spear cracks against his shoulder. His axe slices the air inches from your ear. Then he slips. Just a fraction. And you lunge. Your blade pierces his thigh. Not deep, but enough. He roars, swings wildly. You fall back. Then a shout behind you. Lise! She hurls a stone. It hits his temple with a crack. He stumbles. You drive your spear home, right under the ribs. He collapses, breathing, but not fighting. The raiders see it. Their leader down. Panic spreads. They run. Not all, but enough. You don't chase. You hold. By sundown, it's over. Bodies line the field. Yours and theirs. But the fires still burn inside the walls. Your people are still standing. You climb the tower one last time and light the signal fire again. Not to call for help, but to say one thing. We survived. The fire burns through the night, not for alarm, not for mourning, but for witness. You sit beside it until your cloak smells like smoke and your eyelashes feel singed. Around you the village exhales, slowly, carefully, like lungs remembering how to breathe after being clenched for too long. Nobody cheers. That's not how this ends. But there is relief. There is stillness. And in that stillness there is meaning. You lived. They lived. And that's enough. For now. In the gray morning light you walk the field. You recognize too many faces on both sides. The teenage archer lies slumped by a barrel, his bow still in hand. The boy from Oltmere, who always carried 3 daggers, gone. Mathelin isn't here to count casualties. That job's yours now. You kneel beside each fallen name you can remember, whisper something and mark the ground. A pebble, a twig, anything. No mass grave this time. They deserve names. They deserve to be known. Lise finds you by the stream, your hands crusted with blood and soil. Come eat, she says. No softness in her voice. Just the kind of authority you've come to trust. You follow. She's made stew. It smells like boiled carrots and tough mutton. You eat it anyway. It tastes like survival. Did we win? Someone asks. You glance at the smoke rising in the distance. A single long ship still burning. You nod once. Yes. Historians still argue over what constituted a victory in Viking-era Britain. Was it surviving the raid, driving them off, not losing your home, or merely counting fewer dead than last time? Definitions vary. But most agree a village that repelled a second raid earned something rare, a chance to shape the next chapter. And you've earned that, even if you don't know what it looks like yet. Skari lives. They pulled him from the field, half dead, snarling, coughing blood. He was tied to a cart and taken north to a prison camp run by one of the Allied towns. You didn't watch him leave. You didn't need to. Some say he won't survive the infection. Some say he'll come back. You say nothing. Winter settles like an old man on your shoulders, heavy, expectant. But this time it's not a threat. You have food. You have allies. You have stories to tell by the fire. You even have a tiny festival on Midwinter's Eve. There's music, dancing. Someone butchers a pig that survived the siege by hiding under the signal tower. You eat and laugh and drink until your ribs hurt. And Lise kisses you once, unexpectedly, by the firelight. Just once. But you remember it for a long, long time. The council returns in spring. They don't recognize Oltmere at first. The walls have doubled in height. The watchtowers now have rotating shifts. There's even a stone forge being built near the old granary. Aldrich's maps are now duplicated and distributed to all 7 allied towns. He glows with pride and caffeine. And you wear armor now, not grand armor, not polished, but enough. Enough to make people pause when they approach you. Enough to make you stand a little straighter, even when you're bone-tired. Lise has started teaching, of all things, medicine. She's training 3 girls and a boy with nimble fingers and sharp eyes. She says she'll need more if this alliance spreads. And it is spreading. 2 more towns sent scouts last week. Another lit a signal fire just to say hello. The fires mean something now. They mean resistance. They mean we're still here. One evening, you walk to the far hill alone. The sky is streaked with violet. The wind is warm. You sit and think of the first time you held a spear, of the first scream, of the first no you ever shouted into the face of death, and of what came after. You don't consider yourself a warrior, still. Not really. But you've seen what a farmer with a reason can do, and you've seen how fear when shared can turn into courage, and how courage when fed can become something else entirely. A legacy, a line in the dirt. Someone once told you that nothing grew in scorched earth, but they were wrong. You've seen it now. You've watched it happen. A sprout from ash, a wall from rubble, a leader from loss, and from all of it, a future. One that smells like rain and iron and pine sap. One that hums with the laughter of people who remember and rebuild anyway, because they must, because you did. Spring brings strange sounds to Oltmere, not screams, not steel, but hammering, laughter, babies crying. You forget how unsettling peace can be when you've gotten used to preparing for the worst. But here it is arriving without fanfare. No dramatic banner, no bard singing of victory, just new fences going up roofs being repaired, and someone arguing about goat prices in the market square. You walk among it occasionally, touching a door frame, or patting a post like you're not sure it's real. Lise teases you, you're like a ghost inspecting your old house. She's not wrong. You keep expecting it all to vanish, but it doesn't. The alliance holds against all odds. Trade flows between the villages now. Grain for leather wool, for salt tools, for books. There's even talk of setting up a road a real, maintained road with actual markers so travelers don't wander into marshes or wolves. And guess who they want to organize it? Yes, you. Apparently, surviving 2 raids makes you good at infrastructure. Historians still argue whether these kinds of local alliances planted the seeds for early English unification. Some claim they were short-lived, purely defensive pacts. Others suggest they laid the cultural groundwork for regional governance, what would eventually become the shires and boroughs of medieval England. Either way, Oltmere becomes a name that spreads, not as a battlefield, but as an idea. You're invited to visit Kefin, not for war, for a wedding. You ride out with Lys and Aldrich and 3 of the newer militia, all fidgety and excited. The path is smoother now, freshly trampled by trade carts and messenger boots. There are signs posted at forks in the trail, painted wooden planks with names and arrows. It feels absurdly modern. You realize, Aldrich mutters, this is how empires begin. You grin. With signs, he shrugs. Better than blood. The wedding is loud, colorful, slightly chaotic. You sit through 6 speeches, 2 songs, and 1 very determined child reciting a poem about sheep. The couple is radiant. The food is questionable. Someone gives you a turnip as a gift. It's all wonderful. You realize you haven't seen anyone carry a weapon all day, and no one looks afraid. That night, as the music fades, you and Lys lie on a blanket under the stars. You're not sure who reaches for the other first, but your fingers intertwine like it's always been that way. The stars above seem quieter now, less ominous. No omens, no portents, just cold, distant light, watching something small and human and miraculous unfold below. I never thought we'd have this, you whisper. She replies, that's because we weren't supposed to. And she's right. But here you are. Anyway, weeks later, riders come from Brightmere, not with warnings, but with books. A monk half-blind and all beard sets up a corner in your longhouse. He offers to teach anyone who wants to learn letters and numbers. You build him a bench. Someone donates a stool. Within a month, 3 children and 2 adults can spell their own names. It feels revolutionary, because it is. And yet, you never stop watching the horizon. Not really. Even in peacetime, your eyes still scan the hills for movement. Your ears still flinch at strange sounds in the night, because you know how fast it can change, how thin the line is between normal and ashes. But instead of fear, the feeling you carry now is vigilance, grounded, unpanicked, prepared. That's different, and it makes all the difference. One afternoon you hear children shouting by the gate. You hurry over thinking someone's fallen or worse. But it's just a game. They've drawn a serpent on the ground in chalk, and they're throwing stones at it, yelling for Oltmere. The chalk snake isn't even scary. It's got googly eyes and a crooked tongue. You stare at it for a long time. Then you laugh, a real chest-deep laugh that catches you off guard, because the serpent is gone. And you're still here, you don't know what's coming next. Another raid, a flood, a famine. Maybe all of the above, but now for the first time you believe in the next season, the next year. You believe in spring crops and that ridiculous road and the idea that maybe, just maybe, this village might outlast you, that it might become something you never got to have growing up safe, known, chosen. Later that week, Aldrich corners you with a scroll and a sheepish grin. What now, you ask? He clears his throat. They want to name a district after you. You stare at him. He shrugs. It's mostly just a muddy hill, but still, you shake your head. But you don't say no, because you know better than anyone what it costs to claim that hill, and what it means to let it live. Summer comes in quietly, not with parades or festivals this time, but with the kind of soft, contented hum that only happens in places where people finally believe the worst might be behind them. There are sun-dried apples hanging from strings in the windows. Laundry flaps in the breeze. The village well has a new stone lip carved with simple flowers by a girl whose hands are too small for a sword, but perfect for a chisel. You don't realize how beautiful it all is until you catch yourself just watching, like it's a play written by someone else. And you get to sit front row. There's a new family in town, refugees from far Leiden, which you didn't even know existed until they showed up with a cart and a goat, and stories about sea raiders with blue tattoos and earrings made from Roman coins. You listen carefully. Old habits die hard. But mostly you help them find a roof and get them settled near the stream. Lisa brings them broth. Aldrich offers them a hand-drawn map that's mostly accurate except for one tree that apparently no longer exists. And the little girl, barely 6, asks you if you are the one who stabbed the serpent. You smile awkwardly, and then she gives you a dandelion. You accept it like it's a royal medal. Historians still argue whether certain heroes of this period were real people or exaggerated symbols created in local folklore. Some villages kept oral records of their defenders. Others wove their stories into songs and cautionary tales. You're beginning to understand how myths are born, not from lies, but from survival, told over and over until memory becomes legacy. You're not a myth, but you're beginning to sound like one. The first real council gathering happens in Brightmere. 12 villages now, all sending delegates. You wear your nicest tunic, the one with a single blue stitch on the sleeve, embroidered by Lisa, who claimed you needed one thing that wasn't covered in blood or dirt. She wasn't wrong. The hall is larger than you imagined, carved from old pine and echoing with voices from all over the region. Some speak with lilting accents, some in whispers. One man from Alderholt insists on calling everything by its Latin name, which becomes a running joke before the second hour. You're nervous. But then you speak, and the room listens. Because they know your village, your story, and that gives your words weight, you propose 3 ideas: a shared alarm system using beacons and runners, a common armory with rotating smiths, a council code, something simple that all towns agree to uphold, honor pacts, refuge, laws, trade rules. There's silence, then murmurs, then applause. A woman from Hollow Hill says, "We didn't just survive, we evolved," and it sticks. That word, evolved. You return to Oltmere exhausted, but electric. It's real now, not just defense, not just reaction, but creation. You're shaping something bigger than a village, maybe even bigger than a lifetime. That night you dream of wolves again. But this time they're running beside you. Not chasing, not biting, just running. You wake with tears on your face. No fear, just release. A boy starts building a boat near the lake. He doesn't ask for permission, just drags logs, ties knots, and whistles while he works. When you finally ask what he's doing, he shrugs. Sailing south, gonna see what's past the marshes. You want to tell him to be careful, to stay, but you don't. Because someone once let you pick up a spear, even though you weren't ready, even though you were scared. And look how that turned out. So instead, you nod and say, "Tell us what you find." Lise joins you at the watchtower one evening. She's taller now, not in height, but in presence. More rooted, more luminous. You don't speak, just look. The trees sway, the torches flicker, and in the distance, no sails, just stars. You think of Mathelin, of Skari, of mud and blood and fire. You think of how narrow it was, how close you came to silence, and how absurd it is that from that came this. A child with a boat, a council with bylaws, a chalk serpent with googly eyes. You whisper a quiet thank you, not to any god in particular, just to the ground maybe, to the fact that you're still breathing, still changing, still here, because that in the end might be the only victory that matters. The seasons roll on like a slow turning wheel, and suddenly it's been a year since the second raid. You don't mark the date. You don't need to. Your body remembers. A certain chill in the wind, a taste of smoke that isn't there, the distant sound of metal on wood, even if it's just someone repairing a cart axle. You stand outside the longhouse, hands behind your back, and watch your village. No alarm bells, no panicked shouts, just a baker throwing flour at a giggling boy who stole a half-shaped loaf. It doesn't feel like a celebration. It feels like something deeper, a quiet vow. Never again. You help Aldrich update the map. It's become a ritual now. Each change inked with precision, names carefully etched where nameless forest used to be. New villages appear. Old ones return. The road between Keffin and Hollow Hill now has a name, Serpent's Spine. You didn't name it. But people assume you did. You let them. It's easier than explaining the irony. One evening, a small group of travelers arrives. Foreign accents, long coats. They carry strange instruments and wear expressions that say they're used to asking questions no one has answers to. Scholars, apparently, from the coast, looking to document survivor societies of the northern raiding period. They treat you like a subject. You treat them like tourists. But when they ask what Oltmere means, you pause. Not what the word means, but what the place means. And you realize you're not entirely sure how to explain it. Because how do you describe becoming historians still debate the reliability of local oral histories during this era? Some argue they're too romanticized, distorted by memory and pride. Others claim they reveal the emotional truth better than any tax record or battle ledger ever could. If someone ever records your story, you hope they get the feeling right, even if the facts go a little sideways. Because the feeling is what saved you, not the dates, not the numbers. The feeling of being part of something that shouldn't have made it and did. Lise is running training drills now. She wears a leather vest you helped repair and shouts instructions with the patience of a cliff, unyielding but somehow comforting. You watch a lanky girl struggle with her footing. Lise adjusts her stance with a nod and a quiet, good, again. The girl beams. You feel that beam in your chest. There's a new festival sun's turn, a blend of midwinter traditions and fire rituals adapted from 3 different villages. Someone starts a rumor that it began in Oltmere, and before you can correct it, there are banners printed with your old crest, which, hilariously, you never had. So, Aldrich designs one a serpent, curled into a spiral with a tree growing from its eye. Too dramatic. Yes, too late. Also, yes, children sing a rhyme now. Serpent came and burned the skies. Oltmere rose and watched it die. Now we plant, now we grow. Strong like roots, the raiders know. It's catchy, disturbingly so. You hear it in your sleep, but still you smile. Because they're not singing out of fear. They're singing out of knowing. You repair a roof with an older man named Bram, who tells you without prompting that he once thought about fleeing during the second raid. Had my bag packed, had a map. Then I saw you standing there, yelling at the fire like it owed you money. You laugh. I was terrified. He shrugs. Didn't look it. And sometimes that's enough. You patch the last tile in silence. Then he adds, "Thank you, by the way." You don't respond. You just nod. Because if you say anything, you might cry. There's peace now. But it's not quiet, not boring. It's busy and messy and alive. Hollow Hill sends you a letter proposing trade routes marked with carved posts. Brightmere wants help organizing a festival for newly joined villages. Keffin sends a goat. You're not sure why, but she's adorable, and now her name is Spindle. You find yourself doing math at night. How many days until the next planting? How many blankets do you need if winter comes early? How many arrows in storage? How many stories to pass down before someone forgets how it started? You never wanted this job, but now you can't imagine not doing it. Because if you don't keep count, who will? The fire in the watchtower burns every night. Not as a warning, not anymore as a signal to remind everyone we're here, we're together, and we're ready for what doesn't matter. The answer is always the same. We're ready. You start keeping a book. Not a journal exactly, though sometimes it feels like one. It's more like a ledger of moments, things that happened, things that mattered, things you don't want lost to time or misremembered into myth. Like the day the last of the burned-out homes was finally rebuilt, or when the twins from Hollow Hill got married in the Oltmere Square and used braided rope from 3 villages to tie their hands, or that time Spindle the goat broke into the granary and caused an emergency town meeting which devolved into laughter and pie. You don't write to be remembered. You write so someone will, maybe a child, maybe a stranger, maybe even you, 10 winters from now, forgetting the sound of Lisa's laugh on festival night, or the exact way Aldrich says, absolutely not, when he really means yes. But don't tell anyone I said that. It's not glorious work, but it's honest. And honestly, you've come to trust that more than any sword or shield. Some evenings you sit at the edge of the lake boots off ankles in the water and reread the early pages. You laugh at the panic in your handwriting from the first raid. You cringe at your terrible sketch of the serpent. You pause at the list of the dead. Still there, still sacred. You add no names. You hope it stays that way. One afternoon, a messenger arrives on horseback. Clean tunic, tired eyes, scroll in hand. A seal you don't recognize. You crack it open and read words that make your stomach clench. In accordance with council directive, 12 regional stabilization officers are requested to oversee security and communication across all recognized northern settlements. You blink. Lise leans over your shoulder. Translation: you hand her the scroll. They want to make me an official. She snorts. You've been an official. Historians still argue whether early council officers functioned more like mayors, magistrates, or military commanders. Titles were fluid, responsibilities undefined. But one consistent trait emerges: they were the ones everyone looked at when anything went wrong. You've been playing that role without the fancy parchment. Now it just has a name and maybe a slightly better chair. The next months blur into long walks, longer meetings, and entirely too many stew dinners with neighboring elders who insist on debating trade tariffs as if the fate of the world depends on oat prices. You sit through it all, patient, steady. But when the room gets heated or the proposals turn selfish, you speak, not loudly, but clearly. And people listen, because you never ask for more than you'd give yourself. And that shows. Meanwhile, the village grows. 2 new homes go up near the hill. A midwife moves in from Kefin and sets up a clinic. There's even talk of a small school. Nothing grand, just a shaded hut where kids can learn their letters and not accidentally set fire to the goats, a real incident involving lantern oil and science. You visit once a week. You're terrible at math, but you can tell a good story. And the kids love hearing how you once fell into the latrine while chasing a thief. Lee still brings that up at dinner parties. One evening, a storm rolls in. Big one. Thunder so loud it shakes the beams. You walk the perimeter with a lantern, checking walls and roofs. You don't have to. Everyone's capable now. But they sleep better, knowing you're watching. And honestly, so do you. You pass Aldrich's door. He's awake, of course. Old habits. He waves a mug at you. Still can't sleep through thunder. You shake your head. Still think the gods are arguing. He grins. Hope they're arguing about someone else this time. You grin back. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Just 1 year where you aren't the story. The rain eases by dawn. You sit in the watchtower, wrapped in a blanket, watching the mist rise over the fields. You're tired, deeply, wonderfully tired, not from fear, not from grief, but from life, from the sheer normalcy of survival, of thriving, of waking up knowing there's breakfast and someone needs your help fixing a wheelbarrow, and a group of kids are going to argue about whose turn it is to feed Spindle. And that's enough. That's everything. You close the ledger that evening and mark the final line of the day. Storm past. Nothing broken. Everyone okay. Still here. Still here. And tomorrow you'll write it again. Morning light slants across the village square, catching on the thatched roofs and bouncing in golden shards off the glass jars in the baker's window. You step outside with a slow stretch, joints cracking like old floorboards. A few children dart past your legs, laughing about something involving a frog and a missing shoe. It's a normal day, the kind you once thought might never return. And yet here it is, again. Lisa greets you with a mug of something too hot and too bitter, and exactly what you needed. She sits beside you on the bench outside the longhouse, one leg tucked beneath her, gazing out at the village like a captain surveying her ship. You ever think we're just making this up as we go? She asks. You smirk. Absolutely. She chuckles. Well, we're good at pretending then. Midday brings a visitor, one of the new council scribes, barely older than the school kids, armed with an ink-stained scroll case and far too much enthusiasm. He's compiling regional biographies of noted leaders, he says. Wants to record your story. For posterity. You raise an eyebrow. Which story? He blinks. Well, the raids, the rebuilding, all of it. You shrug. Pick a beginning. I'll make up the rest. He laughs nervously. Doesn't realize you're only half joking. Historians still argue whether early post-raid societies mythologize their local figures or preserve them with honest reverence. Some stories seem exaggerated, others too modest. The truth is likely a patchwork of both. You've learned by now, everyone edits themselves, especially when survival is involved. You give the scribe the facts, but you give him your version too, like how you once chased a raider with a pot lid and lived. He writes that down. You're not sure if it'll make it past his supervisor, but it should. By late afternoon, the village is bustling. A trade wagon has arrived from the coast, loaded with dried fish linen, and most importantly, spices. You help unload. The merchant, a stout woman with sun-leathered skin and a voice like crushed gravel, thanks you with a wrapped packet of something that smells like cinnamon and mischief. Later, Aldrich nearly cries, tasting it in his tea. You make a note, raid-proof, maybe. Flavor-proof, definitely. Someone paints a mural on the side of the schoolhouse. You don't see it until it's almost done. It shows a serpent curling around a tree. Yes, that serpent, and a figure standing at its base, arms raised not in fear, but in balance. The kids say, it's supposed to be you. You squint at it. The arms are far too long. Still, you don't correct them. As twilight sets in, you gather near the central fire. It's tradition now. Stories, songs, plans for the next day. Tonight it's quiet, not silent, just content. Someone plays a lute. Someone else braids flowers into hair. You're halfway through a tale about Aldrich and the flower explosion when a sudden voice pipes up. Were you scared? It's a boy, maybe 9. Big eyes, tiny voice. You pause. Yes, you say. Terrified, but you fought anyway. You nod. That's the trick. You fight because you're scared, not in spite of it. He thinks about that. Then he says, I want to be scared too. Lise snorts. You pat his shoulder. You will be, you say. That part's guaranteed. Later, you sit with your ledger. Again, your handwriting's gotten steadier. You flip back a few pages just to remind yourself how far it's come. The early entries are cramped full of frantic loops and ink blotches. Now they're calmer, cleaner. So is your life, but not your heart. No, that's still cluttered with ghosts and fire and possibility. You think that's okay, maybe even right. You close the book, set it on the table, and blow out the lantern. The fire outside flickers, and somewhere in the darkness, someone hums the old song again, the one that started as fear and became something else, something like a lullaby, something like home. The next morning, someone knocks at your door before sunrise. You open it groggy, expecting a broken wheelbarrow or a goat emergency. Instead, it's a man in worn travel gear, hands clasped respectfully, eyes heavy with miles. He looks like he's been on the road for days. His tunic bears a faded crest you don't recognize, somewhere coastal, maybe, and his voice is hoarse from wind and dust. You're the one they call the Watcher of Oltmere. You stifle a yawn. Not officially. He smiles. That's the best kind. He sits at your table nursing a cup of Lisa's infamous morning tea. You listen as he tells you about his town, small, wind-beaten, tucked between cliffs and sea. About the time they fought off a raid, using nothing but fishing nets and a collapsed well. About how they've heard the stories of Oltmere and want to learn. Not just how to fight, he says. How to stay. How to make something that lasts. You don't answer right away, because part of you still wonders if you know. But then you look out the window, watch the baker's boy chasing a chicken with a ribbon on its head, and think, yeah, maybe you do. So you walk him around, show him the walls rebuilt twice. The schoolhouse still smells like chalk and spilled cider. The forge, where Aldrich somehow manages to make both horseshoes and wind chimes. You tell him what worked, what didn't, what no one talks about but probably should. He writes it all down. Historians still debate whether early survivor villages intentionally shared defense and reconstruction methods, or if it happened organically through travelers and trade. Either way, Oltmere becomes part of that slow web of knowledge. Not a fortress, not a legend. Just a place that figured some things out and chose to share. That's how it spreads. Not with banners, with blueprints and bread recipes and stories. By the time your visitor leaves, he carries more than notes. He carries warmth, the kind that's heavier than steel. You watch him disappear down the road and think good luck. Not because he'll need it, but because everyone does. Summer rolls in, thick, golden, loud, with insects and laughter. You help mend nets with the fishermen, then spend the afternoon teaching a stubborn girl how to ride a goat. Not recommended, by the way. Evenings are spent under stars that feel closer now, like they've been watching, and finally decided to stay. Someone starts carving a poem into the stones near the well. Someone else plants sunflowers around the watchtower. You find a carved charm in your boot's protection, they say. Or good dreams, or both. No one admits to leaving it. You wear it anyway. There's a quiet sense now that things are okay, not perfect, not safe forever, but okay. A season of breath between storms, of watching crops grow instead of flames. You lean into it, let yourself believe, even if some part of you still listens for oars on water. One night at the edge of the square, someone asks you if you do it again. The rebuilding, the defending, the staying. You pause, not to think really, just to let the truth settle. Then you nod. Because even with the scars and sleepless nights and ghosts that still visit your dreams, you know this life is earned, and that makes it worth everything. The stars are bright that night, too bright to ignore. So you walk beyond the village, past the old scorched field, past the rocks where the raiders first landed. It's just grass now, no blood, no fire, just wind and moonlight. You sit, let the silence speak. It says nothing, it says everything. Back home you write one last line before bed. We are no longer what happened to us. We are what we chose next. And that's the kind of story that survives. You don't hear the knock this time. It's Lise who opens the door and lets the wind in. She squints toward the visitor exchanges quiet words at the threshold. You stir from your chair joints, stiff book still open in your lap. It's another traveler. But this one is different. He's younger, maybe 20, with the kind of smile that hasn't yet learned how heavy the world can be. His clothes are mismatched, part soldier, part student, and he carries no weapon, just a pack, a walking stick, and a woven token tucked behind one ear. I was told you know stories, he says. Lise raises an eyebrow. We know a few. He gestures toward the fire. Can I stay the night? You nod. Of course. Because someone always does. Later, as the embers glow low and sleep settles like dust over the room, the young man speaks again. They say the old times are coming back. You don't flinch. But something shifts behind your ribs. He continues, not war necessarily, just movement. Big changes. People choosing sides again. You exhale slowly. The kind of breath that feels like it's leaving with a piece of you. They always say that you murmur. He nods. But I wanted to hear it from someone who's seen it. So you tell him, not everything, just enough. You speak of fire and frost, of names forgotten and nights survived, of mistakes and mercy, of things that can't be rebuilt, but still deserve remembering. He listens like he's starving, and when he finally falls asleep on the rug by the hearth, you sit beside the last flicker of flame and whisper your favorite line, just to yourself, not brave, just breathing. Historians still argue whether figures like you became legends or simply disappeared into the turning world. Some scrolls suggest quiet endings, others hint at heroics. But most agree on one point. When the next storm came, there was always someone who already knew the shape of survival and helped others stand in it. Maybe that's you, maybe not. But someone will remember you, even if only as a voice around a fire telling stories that mattered. The next morning, the traveler is gone, left behind a note. 3 words, charcoal on birch bark. Still here. Thanks. You smile. Fold it. Tuck it into your ledger. No need to write anything else today. You've already said enough. Wind down. 300 words. The light softens. The village fades. And as your thoughts begin to drift, the world outside slows its spinning just a little. There are no more oars in the water, no horns in the distance, only the hush of trees swaying beyond your window and the gentle creak of old beams holding firm through another quiet night. You've done enough. You've held the line, rebuilt. The walls told the stories that deserve to be carried forward. And now all that remains is stillness, earned peaceful and complete. Let yourself rest in it, in the safety of repetition, the comfort of silence, the warmth of a world that didn't forget you. Somewhere far off a lute begins a sleepy tune, soft off key but full of heart. And you find yourself humming along just under your breath, the way you did as a child before the world grew so loud. You are not alone in this quiet. Someone somewhere is listening with you. Their fan hums gently in the corner. Their lights are low. They've taken this journey with you. And now together, you both arrive at the same still place where breath slows and nothing is urgent, and the past, for all its weight, gently tucks itself in. Good night, watcher of Oltmere. Good night, you. Sleep well.